Welcome, everybody, back to the Friar Talk podcast and YouTube channel. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Manny Machado ankle injury and just talking about how he's going to be replaced, how hard it's going to be to replace him, and kind of what we expect the Padres' plan to be. Now, if you did not watch the last Rocky series, it was really, really brutal to watch. Definitely the worst series of the year when you add in, you get swept by the Rockies. Your pitching looks bad. Your kind of hitting looks bad. Just horrible all over. And then you get a Manny Machado ankle injury, which at the time I thought it looked a lot worse because it looked like his foot was completely sideways. I know a lot of people we were talking about it before. It kind of looks similar to the Saquon Barkley injury earlier this year, where it was hard to tell, like, is it a break? Is it a sprain? Machado, though, ends up kind of like putting a little bit of weight on it as he's walking off the field, and the x-rays were negative. So right now there's not a lot of information on how long he's going to be out, but it is looking like at least a few weeks. I know there were some reports that were conflicting, basically one saying that he might not have an IL stint, another one saying he's going to be out several weeks. If you have an ankle injury, you're probably going to miss a few weeks, but it's just way too early to tell right now on how that's going to look. Right now, all we know is that his ankle is black and blue, and he's not playing tonight. So we'll see how it happens. He's not currently on the IL, but we'll have to see what the corresponding moves are. Now, Reese Kinnear was optioned for CJ Abrams, and CJ Abrams is going to be starting tonight. So there's going to be someone else that comes up for Manny Machado. We don't know who that is yet, but what we do know is that CJ Abrams is moving into the infield spot. He is going to be playing shortstop tonight, and I didn't look, but I'm guessing Ha-seong Kim is playing third. But what are you guys thinking about this ankle injury, how it's going to impact the Padres, and how are the Padres going to be able to stay afloat? Because this is a guy that might be the least replaceable player in the entire league right now. His outs above average are 100 percentile. He's one of the most valuable players in the entire sport. As we know, he's been carrying the Padres offense. Now we've seen Jake Cronenworth, Luke Voigt, some other guys start to produce at the plate, but he's still been the guy. He has still been the catalyst for this team, both offensively and defensively. So, Chase, how are the Padres going to be able to replace him?
It's almost a rhetorical question because you can't replace him. I mean, the next guy up is Ha-seong Kim. We've seen it. He's struggled, and he's been struggling for the past couple months after his hot beginning of the season. So you look at it and go, okay, well, Cronenworth has finally been hitting, but normally Cronenworth would get on base and then Machado would hit him in, and now you don't have that. You have Eric Hosmer, who's been one of the least valuable players in the last month. Trent Grisham's still struggling. You have a platoon in right field, depending on who's on the mound between Bazzara and Azokar. Profar's been hitting well from the top of the lineup, but he doesn't get that many opportunities to hit people in because he's at the top of the lineup. And so then you're really relying on Cronenworth and Voigt, but Cronenworth has been hitting too. So you got to hope that Abrams comes up in balls. I mean, we look at it, he's been doing pretty well in AAA. It looks like he's finally got everything going for him. So there's that. And then you got to hope that Ha-seong Kim, which everyone knows he's really good defensively, but he needs to start coming around with the bat. We were looking at his baseball savant page. He doesn't strike out that much. He's about average to above average in strikeouts, walks, K percentage, and everything like that. But where he is struggling is barreling the ball up, making hard contact. He was like 1% in barrels, 1% in hard hit percentage. It was just he's struggling to do that. But when he makes contact, he hits the ball for a decent amount of exit velocity. So it's just this is going to be a strong or a really tough couple of weeks where Machado's out, if not more. Like Matt said, there's been a lot of conflicting rumors. Around Flaherty say he might avoid an IL stint because he's a fast healer. Hosmer was saying that Machado looked very optimistic about everything that was happening, about the X-ray results and everything, and that he looked much better today. Then you have the other report saying he might miss 3 weeks to a month, depending on how severe the brain is. But you really can't replace that caliber of a bat in your lineup, especially when you don't have Tatis. Normally it would be, okay, we have Tatis, but now we're missing our two catalysts on offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to have to be next man up. Unfortunately, it was that way with Tatis. It's going to have with Manny. If Ha-seong Kim can play the way he's been playing the last 7 games, I mean, his last 7 games, he's hitting 261 with over around an 800 OPS. He's been pretty solid. And I mean, when we looked at his baseball savant, I said he's good in all the areas I expect him to be: defensively, speed, and I mean, what does he strike out a lot? I don't really remember. Anyways, I don't know. Otherwise, um, if he can do what he's been doing these last couple games, he'll be okay. I believe it's like the past 7 to 10 games where he's been actually pretty solid at the plate. Like you guys said, he just doesn't hit the ball very hard. That's really the weakest part of his game right now. But the other guy that we have to talk about is going to have to be CJ Abrams. And unfortunately for CJ, he's being placed in a very, very difficult position where he can't afford to play the way he played earlier in the year. Granted, he has a lot more at bats under his belt now in AAA. Um, I think he's going to be okay. I mean, in AAA right now, sorry, I'm pulling up his stats. So in El Paso, he was hitting 314 with an 871 OPS. You guys saw I mean, 7 home runs in 30 games. You guys saw all those. If you're on Twitter, you definitely saw how many he hit. All of them were hit a pretty good distance. Now, of course, it's El Paso. Austin Hedges was a stud in El Paso. So, take it a little bit with a grain of salt. But CJ Abrams, of course, should be a lot better than Austin Hedges. So if CJ Abrams could be an average to above average shortstop, average, I'll settle for average, then we should still expect this team to win games. Matt, you said, how is this team going to keep winning? Or you just said something along those lines. It's going to be the same way that they've been doing it. It's going to have to be some timely hitting and great pitching. We know we got the great pitching, but the timely hitting is going to be a little harder to come around without Manny Machado, who's arguably your second best guy with runners in scoring position. Jake Cronenworth is probably the best guy with runners in scoring position if you look at the numbers. Other than that, though, I mean, you guys already brought up Manny's injury. The sprain, it looked really bad, and of course, he was wincing in pain. He had a hard time walking on it. People argue that a sprain hurts a lot more than a break or a fracture. I've heard it in the hospital and stuff like that. You gotta think those people have gone through their fair share of injuries to know that. But he's optimistic. Manny himself is optimistic. Brian Flaherty's optimistic. I mean, it seems like everybody's optimistic. So that's a good thing. I think 2 to 3 weeks, 4 weeks max is good for Manny. And I mean, I think you'll see him a lot more in a DH role than usual.
Yeah, and I'm gonna echo some of what both you guys have said, but I think Chase, the one thing I think that I really want to take away from that is how you can replace him. You can't replace Manny Machado. That's just, I mean, we've talked about it. He's a guy that has a $300 million contract. Sorry, I got some of my eye over here. He has a $300 million contract, and he is living up to expectations. He has been a stud, right? But now we look at it, and you're not going to replace him. I'm excited as anyone for CJ Abrams' future, but there's one underlying stat that looks really, really scary. So in 84 at-bats at home, he's hitting 393 with a 690 slugging and 1100 OPS. You guys want to take a guess at how far the OPS falls down when he's away? When he's not hitting in El Paso? Well, his OPS goes down to a 482 with a 196 average and a 232 slugging. So his numbers are basically a third of what they are if he's not hitting El Paso than when he's hitting in El Paso. And the big complaint, a lot of the question marks when we watch CJ Abrams, if you guys see, I have a CJ Abrams rookie card up here. I love the kid. That is really concerning that he doesn't hit for a lot of power when he's in San Diego. And we look at El Paso and go, well, he's hitting for power now. All 7 of the home runs, they're all at home. No home runs on the road. 24 RBIs at home, 4 on the road. Like, he's just not producing. And the difference in at-bats is 84 at home compared to 56 away. So it's not that crazy of a difference, but that is really concerning to me. And that's kind of one of those things that you might not really pick up if you're looking at the numbers, because we're talking about the numbers. They're great overall. He's been awesome. And he did, and one thing that's really fair is that he did start out really slow when he went to El Paso, or when he went down AAA, and his numbers have risen quite a bit since he's got there. Like, June has been by far his best month. And he's hitting what, like 370? Yeah, 371 so far in June in 62 at-bats. So, like, he's been a lot better, and he's been improving a lot, but it is concerning when you look at those numbers and you go, they are literally a third of what his numbers at home are. So that is my big kind of concern there. But when we're talking about overall, how are the Padres going to continue to win? How are they going to stay afloat? Isaac, you brought it up. Timely hitting, pitching really well, having their starters produce a lot of quality starts. Now, we have seen that kind of been a little bit more of an issue than it was earlier in the season. Makes sense. It feels like the dead baseballs are gone. We haven't really talked about that in a while, but it definitely feels like that's the case. You don't see these balls that just get absolutely destroyed, just dying on the track. Home run numbers are up. And the pitching staff is going to feel that too. But this is still a really good rotation. You have a couple question marks in the bullpen, but I still have faith in the bullpen overall. But another thing to bring up, poor schedule. You're playing the Diamondbacks this week. You're playing the Diamondbacks next week. You play the Mariners soon. Like you don't have that tough of a schedule coming up. And by the time the All-Star break hits, after that, you're like, I think that's likely when you're about to see, hopefully Manny come back, still kind of TBD, but I think that's when Tatis is going to come back. So, or when they're kind of expecting him to be fully recovered and go through, some couple starts in AA, AAA, whatever they do to get some rehab starts in. But that's a month. That's a month. You can survive against a bad schedule for a month. Your pitching staff is able to do that. So you're going to need Jake Cronenworth to continue hitting. He's one of the hottest players in June. Luke Voigt as well. Luke Voigt's been absolutely mashing the baseball. So a couple of those guys that we had talked about that were really underperforming early on in the year, you're going to really bank on them to produce in the lineup because, not going to lie, I don't think CJ Abrams is going to come up here and just absolutely tear it up. I'm super excited for his career as a Padre. I think he's going to be a great player. But when you kind of look into those numbers, it's a little concerning, I do have to say. So I think I'm going to temper expectations on him, but I think the team can. And if you go 500 over the next, 30 days until one of either Manny or Tatis comes back, that's solid. That is completely solid. That's fine. But it's definitely a huge blow, probably the biggest blow any team has had this year, besides the Padres and Fernando Tatis. So it's tough right now, but that's kind of where I'm at with how this they'll be able to stay afloat.
So some news just came in. AJ Casval just tweeted some clarity on Manny Machado. The Padres really don't know whether or not he'll need an IL stint. He's bruised, but he's able to move around. If there's any chance he's healthy in a few days, they want him available. But as long as they make an IL decision before Thursday, they can backdate it to today. And then the overall sense, which it probably should be considering how bad it looked in the moment, is that it's an ankle sprain, which means it could take days. It could also take weeks. They'll get some clarity on that question within the next 2 days. So it looks like they really want to avoid that IL stint, but they got to make a decision by Thursday. So I guess we'll find out within the next couple of days. But sounds more optimistic than pessimistic in this case. Oh, and one more thing. The pitchers have been complaining that the ball feels a little more slick than it did at the beginning of the season. So they definitely did change the baseballs, but what they did is up in the air.
Yeah, the news on Manny definitely sounds very optimistic. Luckily, I mean, I didn't even watch the injury in real time. But when I came back and I saw it on Twitter, it was like, oh man, our season's over, But that was just the immediate reaction. Of course, when you really look into it, you saw he was walking and stuff like that. You're like, oh, okay, we'll be fine. But it would be a really good addition seeing both Fernando and Manny come back here soon around the same time. We lost Manny, of course that sucks, but on the bright side, at least our competitors lost somebody too. Never praying for injury, of course, but us, we're going to be without Manny and Fernando, and the competitors going to be without Mookie and Walker. I assume they're going to be playing each other. Fernando is still going to see the Dodgers like 12 times or so. Same thing with Mookie. Mookie's going to see us 12 times or so. So I don't know. Let's just see how it goes. Of course, you're going to go into one of the biggest series of the year without your two best players. But we're just going to have to hope we take one in that series and keep handling these easy teams. I mean, obviously we can't handle the Rockies for some reason, but handle the Diamondbacks, handle the other teams that you're supposed to be, and we'll be fine.
Yeah, and I think that they're going to be all right. I mean, up to this point in the season, it feels like every single time Joe Musgrove comes out there, it's an automatic W. I mean, that's how it's felt. And Darvish has been very close to that as well. Like a couple bad starts, and basically he's been automatic as well. So we've seen some great performances from a lot of these guys, especially in the pitching staff. So I think that they're going to be fully capable of staying around 500 over the next month without these two. But it's not season ending. It's not, oh my God, he's going to be gone. And Chase, what you just brought up is a lot more optimistic than I think even we kind of expected too. So if you avoid an IL stand, and this is only a few day thing, that is massive for this team. But I also do wonder, you're probably not going to see him at third. Probably going to see him DH a little bit more. But we'll see how it all plays out. But I think that's kind of where we're at with Manny Machado, this ankle injury, how the Padres are going to be able to stay alive. I hope CJ Abrams comes up, balls out, looks really good, and you kind of force his way onto the roster. And also, I'm very intrigued if they do end up putting him on IL, who is the guy that they bring up? We're going to talk about a couple minor leaguers that have been red hot lately. That's going to be tomorrow's episode, but I think for this one, I think that's probably going to do it. So thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you all very, very soon.